What would be your estimate of how many stray dogs there might be in Puerto Rico, either then or now? Or
At the time when I first visited, which was 2007, there was an estimate of 100,000. I estimate now we're looking at around 600,000 stray dogs on an island that, to give everybody a metric, is roughly the size of the state of Connecticut.
it went up from 100,000 to
Yeah,
600,000 homeless dogs or dogs that are not in good homes.
yeah. Well, they're living on the streets, they're living on the beaches. Yeah, here. That's what is so inspirational about these dogs is, if I'm having a bad day, I can look at some of the suffering that they have been through, and it's like, oh, come on, this is nothing. You can get through this.
Hey, I'm Dr. Doug. I'm a chiropractor for both animals and humans. My life's passion is volunteering at farms and helping rescue animals in need. Join me as we connect with people who have dedicated their lives to helping animals. Together, we'll discover how helping animals live better lives will teach us to be better humans. Welcome to the Animal Cracker Podcast. And today we're honored to have Chrissy Beckles, founder of the Sato Project, joining us. Since 2011, they've rescued over 7,150 dogs from Puerto Rico, providing top-notch care and finding them loving homes. But they didn't stop there. Chrissy and her team tackle overpopulation and suffering through the spay neuter programs, and they've helped over 8,000 animals. In crises like Hurricane Maria and recent earthquakes, they've been on the front lines, rescuing dogs, providing aid, and reuniting families through their No Dog Left Behind program. Get ready for a heartwarming conversation filled with tales of hope and resilience. Welcome, Chrissy, to the Animal Cracker Podcast. Thanks
Good
for being
morning.
here.
Thanks for having me, Doug. I appreciate it.
Well, this is great. We connected a couple of weeks ago, and I've been following you on social media or your group, and I'm very honored to have you here. So thank you so much. Um, I have a really easy way we can open, which I think tells a lot. I think it'll launch us off nicely. Just the name, the Sato Project. I didn't know what Sato means, and if you tell us, you explained it to me a few weeks ago, but I think that will kind of set the tone of who is the Sato Project and what does that even mean?
Okay, so you're gonna kill me right off the bat here. It's the actual pronunciation is Sato.
Oh, okay. That's I need to know. So thank
Yeah.
you.
So it's Sato, and it is a local colloquial term in Puerto Rico for stray, abandoned, or street dog, or mixed breed dog. Every Caribbean island has a differing term. Some are more endearing than others, but Sato is the name that is given here on island, and so when I was, made the decision to start my own nonprofit, I was wrangling with an idea of what we were going to be called, and I needed something that was going to resonate and immediately talk to the work that we were doing, and I wanted to have Sato in the title. It's something that kind of resonates with me. I'm originally from England. I moved to New York with my husband for his career in the late 1990s, and now I'm this Brit in Puerto Rico rescuing dogs, and I have my heritage is from all different parts of Europe, so I feel like I'm like a little bit of a Sato as well. I feel like we all are. We all
Mhm.
have a differing makeup, and it's what makes us unique. What I love about these dogs and what has made me dedicate my life to them is they really are a mirror of Puerto Rico, and how strong and just the tenacity that the dogs have for survival. It's essentially they keep moving forward. They're not
Mhm.
looking back. I mean, some of the experiences and the horrors that these dogs have experienced in their lives. If that had happened to me, I wouldn't want anything to do with mankind. But they have this innate ability to, to keep moving forward and to live in the moment, and for forgiveness and for love. You show them the most minuscule amount of kindness, and it is reciprocated, 10 or 100-fold. I mean, I feel like it's a statement we hear a lot within the rescue community, that it wasn't that I saved the dog saved me.
There's so much we learn from dogs all the time. And, when I work with dogs, it just reminds me of that compassion and that hope. Like, you could have a dog that gets a leg amputated, and if it's still loved a little bit, like you said, even just a little bit, it's going to have a great life with three legs.
Yeah,
It's happy, it
I
wants to
don't know.
play, it just wants to go forward. And there's so much to learn in that outlook or that point of view.
That's what I love, and that's what is so inspirational about these dogs is, if I'm having a bad day, I can look at some of the suffering that they have been through, and it's like, oh, come on, this is nothing. You can get through this. If a dog that has been hit by a car and dragged and has three of its legs destroyed, has the ability, despite being in unsurmountable pain and distress, to wag their tail and look at you as if to say, like, I know you're going to help me, and I'm ready to receive the help that you want to give me. It's like, come on, like, I truly, truly get incredibly inspired every single day by these dogs and their capacity for love, and like I say, to keep moving forward, and to kind of bring it back around. It truly mirrors the spirit of Puerto Rico. I mean, this is the island that can't get a friggin' break. We had a once in 100-year storm in 2017 with Hurricane Maria, a Category 5 hurricane that actually made landfall on Dead Dog Beach, where we concentrate our work. So it was very personal for our entire organization, but it decimated the island. It was the longest blackout in US history. And yet it wasn't, front page news. It was front page news for 2 days. And then, sadly, there was that horrific shooting in Las Vegas. And then that took over the headlines, and Puerto Rico was forgotten about.
How many days were you guys in blackout, or
There
approximately
were
month?
parts of, an entire island-wide blackout, I think, for 2 weeks. You would need to fact check me on
Mm.
that. I lost my home in Maria. Like, the area where I lived was without power for 4 months. There were parts of the island that were without power for almost a year. People didn't have access to, fresh water for almost a year. The electrical grid is still, being repaired to this day. It's held together literally with like twine and duct tape.
Wow.
So, and then, so that's 2017. We're just kind of getting back on our feet in 2020. And I was woken up at 4:30 in the morning on, I think it was the morning of Epiphany. So it was like January 7th, with like a 6.4 earthquake. And then I think 24 hours later, we had a 5.8. And then there were 10,000 aftershocks. And so, once again, the entire island is without power. The center of the shocks were on the southern coast around Ponce, and that kind of western area. And it was, we just felt like, God, we can't get a break. And then we go into COVID. Um, and then we were coming out of COVID, and we get hit with another hurricane. It was only a category, I think it was a category 2. And yet before it hit the island, Fiona, which was in 22. We're in 24, yeah, right. 22, Fiona hit. And before it even made landfall, the entire island was without power again. So I feel we take, 5 steps forward and 25 back.
Yeah. And
Um,
there's
and
your
yet everybody is still smiling and hopeful and, would give you the shirt off their
yeah.
backs.
And that's that resilience and
Oh, it's incredible. Like,
always taking the next step forward. I wanted to ask you about, so you say you're from the UK and then you were in New York, supporting your husband's career at that point, and then
mhm.
somehow you wound up in Puerto Rico. Can you tell us how you started the project and how long were you in Puerto Rico before you got this like thought maybe I should do this, or did you move to Puerto Rico already with as soon as I get to Puerto Rico, I'm going to do this project?
I had never visited Puerto Rico before. My husband, he's a professional stuntman. He has every boy's dream job. He like crashes cars for a living and fights people and gets set on fire. He died. The joke in our family is he dies really well. So he was contracted on a film. He was working on the movie Che with Benicio del Toro. So he was filming in Puerto Rico for a couple of months. He'd never been to Puerto Rico before. We had one dog at the time, our first dog together, Basher, a little tenacious Jack Russell. And I came to visit him for a week, and he said to me before I even got on the plane, "You are going to freak out when you see the dogs here." And I was like, "Ooh, that doesn't sound very good." Exactly what he predicted happened. I was seeing dogs everywhere, which, wasn't completely out of left field to me. I've traveled in Europe quite a lot, and you know, Greece especially has a particularly bad stray dog problem, and cats also. So it wasn't out of left field, but it was just that it it seemed so normal to everybody, to the citizens of the island, and yet I was seeing it, and it just seemed, it was amazing to me. Like, if you saw a stray dog running down the street or a loose dog in Manhattan, there'd probably be 20 people running after it saying, "Oh my God, there's a dog there. What should we do?" And yet I think there's been a problem for so long here in PR that it's the norm now. People have grown up, seeing stray and abandoned dogs, and so it's not a surprise to them.
What would be your estimate of how many stray dogs there might be in Puerto Rico, either then or now, or
I mean, at the time when I first visited, which was 2007, there was an estimate of 100,000. I put that estimate now, after Maria, when 5% of the population of Puerto Rico left the island and did not return. Um, I would, and then we went through COVID, where essentially a lot of veterinarians were not able to open to the public or offer any kind of services to the public. You certainly couldn't have any kind of mass spay neuter efforts, with all the social distancing and cautions going on. So no spay neuter essentially for 2.5 years. I estimate now we're looking at around 600,000 stray dogs on an island that, to give everybody a metric, is roughly the size of the state of Connecticut.
it went up from 100,000 to
Yeah,
600,000 homeless dogs or dogs that are not in good homes.
yeah. Well, they're living on the streets. They're living on the beaches. Yeah, here.
Wow. Yeah. So do I say Sato? Sato?
Sato.
Sato dogs. Um, so move back to how did you get started?
I spent the week that I was in Puerto Rico with visiting, feeding dogs, taking them to whatever vet I could find, essentially putting some money towards the problem, but then not knowing what to do next. And I left at the end of the week, and I will never forget. I sat in my seat on the plane home, and I was just like, I need to do something. I can't forget what I've seen. It wasn't one of those things that, like, I saw it and I can walk away from it. It just, it I don't know what it was. It just really resonated with me. And I was like, I have to do something. I didn't know what that looked like. It was 2007. So I get back to New York and I'm, um, Googling websites or rescue organizations. So think back to 2007 for, those of us that were around during that time. I think Twitter, as it was then named, was in its infancy. There was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, there was no TikTok.
Barely we had YouTube. I put up my first YouTube video in 2011, and I was kind of like early stages of YouTube. It was around for a couple of years before that, but
Mhm.
we didn't have this. We
No,
didn't
there
have this.
was no, there was
Yeah.
not the social media as we know it today. It just didn't exist. So, and the internet too. I found websites, but they were literally a static page with a little bit of information about an organization. So I wrote to as many of them as I could. Sorry, that's one of my Satos right now, Charlie, making herself heard. I wrote to as many as I could, saying, I visited, I came to Puerto Rico. I was horrified by what I saw. What can I do? And a couple of people wrote back to me. They were both kind of expats that were working in Puerto Rico. A lady named Ginny Cornett, who was a marine biologist that was working in Yabacoa, and a lady named Elizabeth Cracked that was a writer that was working in the San Juan area. So I started volunteering for them because I ran my own business. I made my own schedule and I could travel back and forth a lot. So I was traveling to Puerto Rico as much as I could at that point, and it always makes me, you know, I look back on those days a little wistfully because I was consulting and I made a nice salary, so I could throw a lot of money at the problem too. I was probably their best donor because I would see things and immediately PayPal or say like I'll cover the cost of that dog. Um, and feel that I was at least doing something. We adopted our first Sato, who we named Boom Boom, which I'm a champion amateur boxer, and that was my ring name or my fight name that I inherited from my husband, who was a professional boxer. And when he retired and went into stunt work, he's smart. He figured he could get paid a lot more money for pretending to get hit than actually getting hit in the ring.
Wait, wait,
He
wait, wait, wait. So you were called Chrissy Boom Boom Beckles.
Yes,
I love it.
that's my ring name.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's so cool. And just quick interjection here. How many amateur fights or how many fights do you think you've had?
A lot. I've broken my nose 8 times. I also did Muay Thai boxing when I was
Yeah.
in England, which is and competed in that to a pretty high level, and that's a particularly brutal sport.
Yeah, I've seen that
Um,
I've seen that quite a bit.
Yeah, I broke
Yeah.
my cheekbone doing that too. I had a distended cheekbone doing Muay Thai. So
So,
we joke like my husband was so naturally talented. He did also Thai boxing as well. He's the natural talent of the family. I'm just like the hot-headed one who grew the only girl in my family. So I have brothers and grew up, scrapping and being tortured by them. They're like fun on a Saturday morning when my parents went
wow.
shopping was to like beat me up for 2 hours. And then, my parents would come home and my pigtails would be like all a squiff.
Wait,
And yeah,
so how many fights do you think you've been in between Muay Thai
a lot.
and boxing? Like
God,
50,
I don't,
20?
oh, more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Wow.
I'm a New York Golden Gloves champion. I've boxed in Madison Square Garden 3 times.
Wow.
I have some other amateur titles in the New York area, Metropolitan
Yeah.
champion.
So you
So
you do have a little Sato in your, you know, you
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, I'm scrappy. I'm
You're
scrappy.
you were the first Boom Boom.
Yes. Well, no, Bobby was the first Boom Boom. Well, Ray Boom Boom Mancini was the first Boom Boom.
Right. I remember Ray Boom Boom Mancini.
Bobby, was given that ring name, and then he
Is Bobby your
bequeathed.
husband?
Bobby's my husband. Yeah,
Yeah.
he bequeathed it to me, and
And now you
this
gave it to
little
a dog.
this little Sato really had to fight to survive. She was left at one of the municipal shelters on island. There are only 5 municipal shelters in Puerto Rico, and they have a euthanasia rate combined of around 95%.
Oh wow.
So a dog that's going in there doesn't necessarily ever come out. So Boom Boom was taken to the shelter with her siblings. She had 3. She was one of 4, and her mother. Her mother had died in the shelter, and she was one of 4 puppies that were on a concrete floor that was hosed down every day. The shelter had run out of food, and so I got a call from Elizabeth, one of the organizations that she ran one of the organizations I was volunteering for, and said, we need to go into the Arecibo shelter. We want to take supplies in, and we want to pull some dogs out of there. And she sent me some photographs. And I kind of called around all of my friends. I sent a ton of money. They went in the following day, and I saw this photograph, and it was 4 puppies on a concrete floor. And one of them looked like Basher, our Jack Russell, who was white with a black eye. And you'll see there's a theme going on here. Like, he had a black eye. He looked like he got bashed in the eye. So his name was Basher. And I'm a sucker for any dog with a black or a brown eye. And there was this pathetic little, I mean, all 4 of them were pathetic, but there was this little white dog with a black eye. And I said to Elizabeth, I will adopt that dog. Like, get those puppies tomorrow, and that dog is mine. So they went into the shelter the following day, and very sadly, that puppy had not survived, and another one of the siblings had died. And they had 2 sisters in the car alongside, I think, 15 other dogs.
So the one that you spotted with the black eye or
He
brown eye, that one
didn't
didn't survive.
never made it out of the
Yeah.
shelter.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so they pulled 15 dogs. They had these 2 siblings in the car, these 2 sisters from that litter, the only survivors of that litter. And one of the sisters that then died in the car on the way to the vet, which left 1. And I will never forget Elizabeth saying, Chrissy, like, the puppy that you wanted to adopt died. There's 1 sibling left. She has a brown patch over her eye. She's in the vet's office. We don't know if she's going to survive, but we're calling her Freckles Beckles because she's got little brown spots all over her. She's a real fighter. And I was just like, she's mine. And I saw this picture of her, and again, I'll share the picture with you. And I was like, that's Boom Boom. She's gonna have to fight to survive. And she did.
Mhm.
And the minute she came into my life, my passion and my intention it was like a switch was flipped. I was already, committed, but when she arrived, and I was driving to JFK to pick her up, a friend had very kindly escorted her on a flight, brought her with him from Puerto Rico. And I'll never forget, we were driving, my friend Karamia and she's driving me to JFK, and I turned around and I said to her, what if I don't like her? Carol was like, what are you, crazy? And we call each other chicken. It's like our term of endearment for each other. She's like, chicken, you're going to love her. She's like, you're going to be fine. I'm like, but what if I don't? And she's like, she was kind of blowing me off, but I was like really freaking out in my head. Like, I'm going to meet this little dog that I've only seen photographs of. I know her story. My heart breaks for her, but what if there isn't a connection? And of course, we pull up outside arrivals, and I'm handed this teeny tiny little freckled puppy with a brown eye, and it was game over. It was just like that. My heart was crushed. she ruled the house from then onwards. You know, she changed my life because this little puppy would look at me and her eyes would tell stories. And it makes me really emotional to think about it now. I'm like, what horrors did this little teeny tiny being see? You know, she watched her mother die like her siblings die. I can't even resonate what that does to a being.
Right. And every sibling died except Boom Boom,
She
right?
was the only one that
Of
survived.
of 15, right?
No, there were 15 in total that we pulled out of the shelter. She was
Right.
one of four,
Yeah.
but was brought in with her mother. So her mother died, and then her three siblings died as well.
Did you get a facility in the beginning when you began this project,
No,
or?
I basically I was continuing visiting PR. My you know, we had Boom Boom. My commitment had kind of gone through the roof, and Bobby was filming. He was back in PR filming the Rum Diaries with Johnny Depp, and I came to spend some time with him. And I was rescuing dogs, and the crew found out, you know, what I was doing, and they all pitched in and gave me enough money to rescue. I think it was 23 dogs I was able to rescue in a week and get them into a vet's office and get vet bills paid
In Puerto Rico?
in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And it just, at the end of the week, I had also been contacted by Felix Trinidad, who is he's a world champion boxer from Puerto Rico. He's
Yeah.
an incredible human being. I mean,
I've seen him box before because I do watch a lot of boxing,
yeah,
and I know who that is. I mean,
he is
amazing. Yeah.
tantamount to God in Puerto Rico.
And the personality. He's got
Yeah,
both.
he's a
Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful human being. He true. I mean, it's like, you know, the seas part when if he walks down the street. He's wonderful, and his team had reached out to me because they knew I boxed, and I got invited to his gym, and I went to train with him, and he made, you know, an incredibly generous offer to train me, and so I kind of had that offer, and you know, the experience of being able to help so many dogs over a short amount of time. And I sat down with Bobby the night before I left, and I said, I want to quit the consulting business, and I want to rescue dogs full time. To this day, I I don't know, you know, like how he took that in and was not like, what are you, absolutely out of your mind? He just turned around to me and he said, okay. And we have the Beckles family saying, that's our last name, is like, if you're gonna do something, you don't fuck it up. Like
Yeah.
that's our motto. Whatever you do, as long as you give it 100% and you know you don't fuck up, then whatever happens is gonna happen. So he said, I'm going to give you some money. You go set up a bank account. He's like, and don't fuck it up. It's like,
There,
okay.
there
So
you go. And what year was that? 2011?
no, that's 2008.
Wow.
So I went, set up a bank account. I quit my consulting business. And I started rescuing pretty much full time. I call it like my Harvard education in rescue, those first few years where, you know, I volunteered for other organizations, and I I was then formulating a plan of how I would like to run a rescue and what I'd seen worked, what didn't work,
Mhm.
you know, ideas that I had. And the one thing that just kept going through my head was, if I'm going to do this, I want to do it the right way and the most responsible way that I can. Um, and so I was very lucky to be put in contact with a veterinarian named Dr. Cinda Crawford, who works out of the University of Florida. And she's one of the world's leading infectious disease specialists. And she was incredibly generous then, and still is now. She has been a mentor to me. And I said to her, you know, I want to I want to start a nonprofit in Puerto Rico and I want to rescue dogs. And can you please help me, work through and come up with a protocol which is going to ensure I'm not ever transporting a dog with a communicable or infectious disease.
Because a lot of your dogs do get even sent up where I am today in New York City, right? So
Yeah, pretty much
yeah,
every dog that we rescue flies into New York. It's always been our model, and so
so
the
you didn't want to be moving a parasite up into New York.
not even
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
It's like we're dealing with disease down here that might differ from what is in New York, but
mhm,
then there are things I mean, we don't have Lyme disease in Puerto Rico. It doesn't exist. Yet it exists pretty much all over the mainland US. We have a much higher incidence of distemper down here. We're also a pretty small island with a fairly prevalent rabies problem, primarily within the mongoose population. But still, my
yeah.
my biggest fear is putting a dog on a plane that is sick. Um, and the majority of our dogs go directly into homes. So, I wanted to be cognizant of the fact that I'm putting a dog in a family that might have other animals in the home as well, and you don't want to put a sick dog there.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a backwards way of approaching rescue. It's like, okay, what do I need to do to ensure this, one dog is completely healthy? Like, how much is it going to cost me to do that? And then in turn, that's going to essentially set the number of how many dogs I can rescue.
Right. So
Um,
so in a way, you worked backwards.
I did, and my CPA was
Yeah,
kind of laughing at me because I was like, I want to do this the right way, and so if I know it's going to cost me $1,500 to vet a dog to this standard, then and I've only raised $3,000, I can only rescue two dogs.
right.
And he was kind of like, well, that's not necessarily the way that you should be approaching this. Usually people are rescuing and then figuring out how they're going to pay for it. I didn't have nonprofit status at that time. And I was essentially relying on my husband to cover all the costs of this. He would I would joke with him, like he would be going off to work and I'm saying, like, what are you doing today? And he'd say, oh, I'm being set on fire or whatever. And I'm calculating in my head, okay, so that means he's going to get, some potentially, an adjustment in his fee. And that means that I can go out and rescue, two dogs today or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe he thought, oh my God, has this woman taken out like an insurance policy on me or something? She's like suddenly incredibly interested in like how
Yeah.
dangerous my job is.
You know,
But
I'm always, and I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago when we were on the phone, but I'm always intrigued by the concept of triage and in crises, but
right.
you quickly assess and go, this person's going to be dead in about 1 minute. Keep moving, and you go to the next person, and that one you can save. And they're horrible because, like, how could anybody make this decision? But in a way, your whole career is triage because you can't just like save 600,000 dogs this year, which might be the amount of dogs in Puerto Rico at this given moment. But can you save one dog well? And you have to make decisions all the time, which is horrible. And I'm sure each one breaks your heart because you have to say no many times before you can say yes, but you also want to be able to successfully save the next one that's the next one.
Hmm.
And it needs someone that can make those decisions or nothing happens.
Yeah, I mean, it really, when we talked, when we first met, it really resonated with me when you talked about triage. That was something that I learned about way before I was rescuing dogs. I learned about it during the horrific tragedy that was Hurricane Katrina. With I don't know. I think there was a book that was written by a couple of the doctors that were in one of the hospitals there, and they talked about having to do triage to the most horrific kind of extent of what it calls for. Um, and it's been something that's been prevalent in this life of mine of rescue. And what started off as one dog at a time and doing it the right way, and always wanting to have a plan in place, because I think the moment you step into a scenario and you don't have a plan in place is where problems happen. I mean, I know there's that saying, the best laid plans, and yeah, I feel that it's not necessarily one plan, but as long as you have an idea of what's going to happen, and if you get hit out of left field, then you've got to be able to pivot. And a lot of my my boxing training and what I learned from that sport comes comes to mind and helps me within those decisions. But I've kind of hit an arc whereby when it was just me rescuing and I didn't have a staff, and we my first employee, I think, was 2014. I worked for 10 years almost before I started to get paid. Once you start to have those other commitments, then you almost have to change your outlook. And what we're dealing with now on island, where it's an unprecedented number of dogs. And to your point, as much as I want to, I can't save 600,000 dogs. um, just what the rescue community is going through worldwide as a whole right now. Shelters are at bursting point. They're getting hit left and right with owner surrenders, and people that are tragically having to make incredibly hard decisions when they can no longer afford their pets. And so there's been this huge influx of animals going into the shelter system. And our model is to take dogs from Puerto Rico, bring them to New York, and while I would say 99% of the dogs that go through my organization go directly into homes, I like to help out others on island that don't have access to the resources we have, and thereby put them on our flights and help them get placement. I can't do that right now because, one, there's no space, and two, it doesn't feel right for me to be bringing in a plane load of dogs when the local shelters are at bursting point. I mean, a rescue dog is a rescue dog. It shouldn't matter where they're from. But I feel like our resources right now need to really swing towards that triage mentality. And it's like, okay, what can we do to help the most, at a certain level? And that becomes spay and neuter. And I would say 99% of the problem of strays and abandonment on this island comes back to lack of spay and neuter. So it's become an educational process combined with offering access to low cost or no cost services, and then in some cases having to really incentivize people to bring their animals and educate them that it's not a bad thing to spay or neuter your animal. It's
Right.
actually an incredibly responsible thing to do.
Was it accurate in the introduction when I was introducing you that you've been involved in possibly 8,000 or more spay and neuters as
Yeah,
your
I mean
your
that number
your
is
group?
literally going up every.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even with all this triage, in decisions to make, and arguably a low percentage of the ones you actually do get to save, it's doing it well, and it's doing it with awareness, and doing it authentically the best you can.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, a big part of the whole work or the focus should always be spay and neutering. Like
Yes.
that should be a foundation of this whole situation. And think about it. I mean, just in Puerto Rico, that's the size of the state of Connecticut. There's 600,000 dogs on the street. Like, this
Hmm.
is not a little number. This is a big number. And then without your group in there, the old numbers were 95% were being euthanized, and that was just kind of the deal. But so I'm just so impressed with the work. There was something we talked about, that the whole concept is very visual for me. But you guys have that dead dog beach, and can you just tell everybody what Dead Dog Beach is? And that's kind of where you guys do a lot of your rescuing, right?
Dead Dog Beach is not a name that I gave to that beach. It's a name that was given locally. It was a beach that I inherited, so to speak, from Ginny, one of my mentors. When I first walked on that beach in 2007, there were hundreds of dogs running in packs, and I mean, it was mind blowing to see. It's like, where do you start? And Ginny's organization could afford to take, one or two dogs at a time. And I will never forget, like, standing there, and some of the dogs were friendly, some of them were feral. They didn't want anything to do with you. She had volunteers that were feeding the dogs daily, and making sure that they had fresh water. But it truly was a dumping ground, for animals. And sadly, people would go there to abuse them as well. And, there were some real horrors that happened on that beach. And one of the biggest motivators for me was, I I didn't want to ever have to stand in front of a group of dogs and have to make a decision who I was rescuing and who I wasn't. Like, I didn't want to play quote unquote God, because it's the most horrible, horrible feeling. Um, and on that beach, you would take one dog, and we gave them all names, and you could go back the next day and some of them would be missing, and you would never know what happened to them. And, I'm still haunted by that.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, there's often a lack of understanding that a nonprofit, even though, we're here to do good, we have a mission, it's a business. And we're in the business, in our case, the Sato Project, of rescuing dogs. And so I wanted to do it not only right as far as like my vetting protocols were concerned, but I want to be able to collect data, and I want to be able to show people that what I am doing is making a difference. I don't want to be on the proverbial hamster wheel. And, I'm 18 years in at this point, and I can see the difference that our work has made. And a lot of that comes down to just sticking in one area. And so you can see tangible difference. It's there. You can, if you walk on Dead Dog Beach today, you're not going to see hundreds of dogs running in packs. There are currently 7 feral dogs living on that beach that we feed every day. They get fresh water every day. We're working to trap them. Some of them might be candidates for our program. Others are going to be candidates for spay, neuter, vaccines, and release them back. And that's the most humane thing we can do. And
Yeah.
believe you me, it's back to the whole triage. It's not something I think I'll ever be comfortable with. Trap, spay, neuter, release, because I have seen so many, almost 8,000 dogs that I've put into homes, and I've changed their lives. And, our team has worked so hard through vetting and adoption, to find them an
Yeah.
incredible family. Not every dog's a candidate for
Yeah.
that. And I think we talked about this last time, that I feel man as a species, we're essentially saying to these dogs, you're going to have what I want you to have. And it's not necessarily what they're comfortable with. Like a dog that doesn't want any human interaction, why is it okay for me to force that dog to, to be in a home?
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them want that. They've never known any different than being on a beach. And if they are not getting pregnant every 6 months, they have access to food and water, and we can give them antibiotics as needed, preventatives as needed. Then it's the best that
Right.
I can do for that individual dog.
Yeah. And I think it's important that people hear this, because people might go, well, why don't you just go into the woods and grab a squirrel and make it your pet?
Mm-hmm.
And is that, why would you do that? Like, the
Right.
squirrel is happy being a squirrel in the woods.
Yeah,
And if some of these dogs on Dead Dog Beach are truly feral, they don't necessarily need to be placed in a home in New York City, where they might
exactly.
not ever be able to make that transition. And so, like you said, you're trying to neuter them if you can. You're trying to give them fresh water. You're trying to feed them. And these are all the decisions. And if you're listening to like Chrissy's story, please try to do the math in your head. Let's say she saved 8,000 dogs over the past 18 years. How many dogs had she not saved that still haunt her and break her heart? The work is huge.
Listen, we have incredible supporters. I have, I call them the GOAT team, the greatest of all time. I have an unbelievable team that I am so proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with them every single day. And we all, we use the boxing analogy that like we're always in each other's corner,
Yeah.
because we are. And you know what? You put any of us in that corner and we're going to come out swinging, because that's what we do. My team, the ones that are on the front lines, they understand the decisions that have to be made. And listen, it's not that I'm happy about all of these decisions or that I sleep well every night. I don't. I wrangle with every decision that has to be made, but at the end of the day, I want to make a difference and impact as many as we can in the short time that I'm on this earth. Listen, I'm putting everything in place that this organization is hopefully going to be able to run in perpetuity, and continue this great work. And I hope at one point, at some point, the Sato Project isn't needed anymore. But until we get to that day, then difficult decisions have to be made. And to your point, I think it saddens me when we get pushback and it's people saying, well, why can't you do this, or why can't you go get this dog, or why can't you take these dogs from me? And it's because like I don't want to fill up and have 400 dogs in my vet's office. One, they haven't got the space. Two, how do I pay for them all? Three, like where are they all being placed? It goes back to having that plan, and it goes back to triage.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best that you can do and the greatest use of your resources is to say, I am going to spay and neuter this dog and vaccinate this dog, and they are going to go back to a place where they get access to food and water, and somebody's keeping an eye on them, and they're not going to allow them to quote unquote suffer. If that dog tomorrow gets hit by a car and is in dreadful pain and has debilitating injuries, then we're going to humanely euthanize. We're not going to allow a
Right.
dog like that to suffer. But still, it's like we've got to do the best that we can do. And at the end of the day, we are only human, and there are
Right.
only 24 hours in every day, and we pack as much as we can into every day. Like I've not had a vacation since I started this organization.
Right.
I'm friggin' exhausted. Like I should be, I don't know, my concealer brand should be sponsoring this friggin' podcast, because
You already had this career that at this point you might be living a more cushioned life, a more rest and relaxation with the career that you built for yourself prior to this. And
mhm.
you made tough choices. And I guess I just get, I really just get so angry sometimes when I see people leave the type of comments that they just don't understand what it's like to be in the trenches. And I almost wish they could come to a place of crisis and go, okay, just watch what happens. And, you have to make these decisions. It's not, fairy tale. It's very raw and gritty. And,
Yeah, I
you
think
know,
I get a lot of messages saying, "Oh, it's my dream to do what you do," and I, I don't want to burst their bubble, but it's kind of like, no, it isn't. Like,
you're
I
right. It's
don't,
probably not. It's probably
I,
not your dream. Not
yeah,
you, but they're probably
you might think
clueless.
it is, but
Yeah.
it's not.
And it never ends because it's a 7 day a week job also,
It's 24/7.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not, dogs aren't waiting to be rescued Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Um, things happen.
yeah.
Um,
Uh,
but you've got to be ready at any point and at any
yeah.
time. I
Oh,
think
oh,
our organization is really, that's one
yeah.
thing we had to be good at. We have to be ready at any point, at any time for anything that could happen.
I wanted to close with two different things. One is if people want to get involved, they should go to your website. They should see your Instagram. And during this, especially the video version of this, if you're listening to it in your car, come back and watch some of the video. But in the description box, also in the video, we've been putting it up on the screen, your website, your social media handle, your donation page. But is that the best way people can connect to you is through your website and social media?
Yeah, I mean, so it's the satoproject.org is our website,
Mm.
and you can learn all about our work and the programs that we run. We do now have a facility in Puerto Rico. We're almost 3 years in at this point. It's been an incredible learning curve for us to do this. It's been an incredible experience. We have volunteer opportunities available. We are really getting behind our spay neuter program, Operation Sato. We launched last year in the fall in conjunction with the Bissell Foundation. Kathy Bissell has been an incredible supporter of our work and provided us with the surgical equipment needed to be able to continue to run these clinics. And so, we're going to do as many as we can. Of those, and we always need volunteers for those, both local and if people want to come to Puerto Rico, and it's a twofold thing when they do so. Puerto Rico's, I think, the biggest industry now is tourism. And so you can come to this incredible island, spend some money, and then come volunteer for us and help out at one of these spay neuter clinics, and help the stray situation. People that are flying from Puerto Rico to New York or New Jersey, we often have smaller dogs or puppies that can fly in cabin. It doesn't cost you anything. It's very little commitment on your part, aside from carrying a very cute Puerto Rican treasure in their unique little carrier on board with you, and then being met at the other end either by their grateful family or by one of our volunteers, ready to pick up the
Yeah.
pup and take them to their family. So there's so many differing ways. I mean, obviously monetary is huge. We don't get any help from the Puerto Rican government. We do rely on donations to do the work that we do, and we're really frigging good at stretching those dollars. We're completely transparent in everything we do. You can see our financials on our website. We have like the highest accolades from nonprofit groups, uh, Guide Star and Charity Navigator, etc. But it's I do want to say I understand what is going on in the world right now, and people are struggling. So it's not always monetarily that the way that you can help. I always say, if you can't donate, you can volunteer. And if you can't volunteer, then you can talk about what we do. Tell a friend, tell a coworker, tell a neighbor. You never know who knows somebody. That's one thing I've found out through doing this, that you never know who has access to things. I mean, if you'd have told me 10 years ago, I would not be shy about asking people for planes. I would have laughed in your face. But you know what? If I'm in a room full of people and maybe one of them has access to a plane, then I'm asking them for it.
Right.
Um, to put it to use.
And I love how people, if they're just visiting Puerto Rico, can bring a small dog back with them,
Absolutely.
and just hand it off.
Yeah, it's all they need to do is,
Yeah.
and a lot of the time our team can help with this, is add a dogging cabin to your reservation. We will drop the dog at the airport, meet you curbside. It's not our first rodeo. We do this all the time, so we know exactly what is needed. Most of the airlines are very familiar with our work. We've got all the paperwork that you need. And then you walk to baggage claim at JFK, and you've got an incredibly grateful family or volunteer waiting to meet you.
Right. Yeah.
And I always say, when you do that, when we transport a dog, or when somebody flies a dog in cabin, you're saving two lives. You're not only saving the life of the dog that you're transporting, but that dog having left, our facility, having left our care in Puerto Rico, it makes space for another dog to come in. So you're
Yes.
saving two. And I think, that's important for people to understand and to realize.
And you kind of said this the whole thing, so in a way, it's kind of a redundant question, because I always want to ask, like, how has working with dogs changed your life? And you actually said that in a million different ways, because there's all the way down to the Beckles family code. But do you have like just a closing way it's just penetrates your soul of this work, and how you're forever just different from it?
I was changed by one scrappy little Puerto Rican treasure who I in a million years I could have never have predicted it. And she changed my life, and in turn, it makes me so proud. She very tragically passed away very unexpectedly in 2016. She got
Oh,
pancreatitis, and she was gone in 24 hours, and it's the hardest thing I have ever had to go through. I felt so helpless that I could save all these other dogs, and yet I couldn't save my own. And I really thought about walking away for quite a time, because it was just so painful to me,
mhm.
what had happened. And it was my husband Bobby that was like, you need to continue, and it sounds corny, but it's absolutely not. He's like, Boomy would want you to continue. It's her legacy. You're
Yeah.
doing this because of her, and you can't stop because she's no longer here. I didn't. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. It truly was. To walk into the Arecibo shelter, which I had never been to. I'd never visited it while she was alive, but I went there after she died. And I did a lot of work with them with the help of my really good friend Sophie Gamon, who's an award-winning photographer, French photographer. She's incredible, and it helped. It was cathartic to do so. And my second Sato is Charlie Boom Boom. She has the sister that she never met. She has her. She's continued to keep her moniker alive, but it was one dog that changed my life. She truly did. And every dog that we rescue is because of her. And
Yeah.
it really, I'm really proud that of what she brought out in me, and
Mhm.
that she's the dog in our logo.
Yeah.
That's Boom Boom.
I,
And
I agree with your husband, Bobby, that because I don't think of it as corny, and people that really love animals get it. your dog wanted you to continue this work. It was kind of your inspiration and
Yeah.
and think of how many from Boom Boom forward, how much that multiplied. Over
Yeah.
8,000 dogs started with Boom Boom.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to close and say how much you've touched my heart,
Thank
and
you. Thanks for having me.
you're really special, and I'm very grateful to have you on today and get to connect. And I want to come down and visit
Oh
maybe
yeah,
maybe
you are
this
welcome
year. And
anytime,
but
please.
I'd like to schedule a time when both you and Bobby are there, because I'll give you guys body
Good,
work.
good luck with that. Like
I'll
we're like ships in the night.
but if I do come at a time when you're both there, you're gonna both get chiropractic adjustments,
Oh God,
and
he would love that. He
and
definitely needs some.
and I'll be there to volunteer to work with you and any dogs you put in front of me. And
Thank you. Yeah,
I have
we'd really appreciate that. And
yeah
I just want to say everybody needs a Puerto Rican treasure in their life. They truly do. These dogs are they're incredible. I hear it. I love nothing more than we have like a private adopters group on Facebook, and I don't often get to see like the good of what we do because I'm kind of on the front lines. But if I try and really make an effort to go on that page. And when I just see people that they're getting so much joy from their dogs, from their Satos, and I love it. It's just it's everything that I could want for these dogs that we're rescuing.
yeah.
Um, they're fighters. We're fighters. We'll continue to fight for them, as long as we can. And like I say, they inspire me every single day. We as a species can learn a lot from dogs. Good Lord, we truly can.
I have this saying, it's dogs can teach us to be better humans.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And it's definitely been that way for me. Thank you so much, and much I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for
Okay.
having me. This has been
Okay.
amazing. And yeah, I'm going to hold you to that, Doug. We're
All right.
expecting to see you in PR.